Free agency in the NFL is underway, and it's so far been a chaotic free agency. There's been a lot of changes in a lot of places. You're seeing smaller teams who did poor the year prior pick up some big pieces. You're seeing mediocre teams who maybe have made the playoffs start to make some significant moves. Bigger teams are dropping players. We're seeing a big shift in each and every single NFL team. And in today's episode, we're kind of in the middle of this free agency storm prior to the NFL draft. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at every single NFL team and grading 10 positions in which good grades means the position is fine, it doesn't need any fixing, and lower grades means you need to establish something in that area. And of course, we're going to be using ideas for free agency and the draft to see how these teams line up with each other, where their, offenses and defenses rank so far, and seeing what needs to be done in order to take that next step and become Super Bowl contenders. This is the Game Day Hour, and I'm sorry that there hasn't been episodes in the last 2 weeks, but we finally are back on, and this is going to be a fun episode, and I cannot wait. Let's get started. Okay, so here are the rules to this episode. We're taking a look at 10 positions: the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, interior offensive line, which is center and guards, exterior offensive linemen, which are the tackles. Then we're looking at the entire defensive line, so defensive end, defensive tackle, nose tackles, the entire linebacker core from outside to middle, cornerbacks and safeties. We're going to actually be looking at them separately because I think they are distinctively, you need to have both very strong. If one or the other is very weak, that's a problem. And so what we're doing is we're going to look at all those positions by each and every NFL team and grading them based on whether the position doesn't need any rework and it's good for the offseason, or if it needs some big rework and we got to get some people in who are going to make each and every single one of those positions better. So without further ado, let's get started with the Arizona Cardinals. I give the quarterback position a B+ because while I like Kyler Murray, I don't think his job is secure, but it's something you do not need to pay attention to if you're Arizona in this offseason. I think it's fine. Maybe in future offseasons, but not this one. The running back position I think is okay, but may need a rework soon. You're going to need some help with the wide receiver position. I understand that Marvin Harrison is probably going to be a breakout star in these next few years, but you need better supporting cast. I just don't think they have a really good wide receiver core. The tight end position is fine. I think McBride is actually a really good pick to have, and I think he'll be the future tight end for the next 3 to 5 years, so I think you're good there. The interior offensive line definitely needs some work. I am not impressed with it, and the last thing you need is Kyler just continuously keep running for your life. It's terrible. The offensive tackles, so the exterior offensive line, I give it a C-. I think that the offensive line should be of significant importance in this free agency offseason. The defensive line is a just straight F. I looked at that and I'm like, you're going to make these linebackers' lives terrible if you can't rush the quarterback. And even then, the linebacker core is at a D- and the cornerback core is at a D+. There is going to be a lot of help needed, but because of Budda Baker, I believe that right now the safety position is at an A-, but he can't do everything. So if you're the Arizona Cardinals, the defense is a high priority while also getting some pieces on the offensive line to protect Kyler Murray. And for a bonus, get a wide receiver to go alongside Marvin Harrison. I think if you do that, you'll be in good position. Next up, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Now, despite the fact the quarterback position is a C+, I don't think there's going to be anything done. I just think that Penix is still unproven, but he's going to be given a shot. There's no need to move him, but I can't rank him higher because he's unproven. The running back core is fine. Bijan's amazing. The wide receiver core, for the most part, is actually pretty good. Drake London, Rondale Moore, those are some pretty big names that I'm okay with. Tight end position is fine. I think Kyle Pitts, I think he secured a little bit of his job last year, probably just due to coaching, it was better. However, interior offensive lineman, you need to work on that. You want to have strong interior. I do not like it. But the exterior offensive line is at a B. I don't think that's going to take a lot of priority. I think it's fine. I think it's just more you want to work on the middle of the running game, especially for Bijan. He's going to be your biggest player. Defensive line and linebacker core C+, C- respectively. They do have some names in there, but I would do hard reworks on both positions. The cornerback core is fine, and then the safeties, amazing. Atlanta, to me, has always been a team that's had a great offense and not a great defense. Last year, they showed some defensive improvement from years prior, and I think they're going to continue on that because, they have a really good secondary, but you got to, up front in the trenches, work on that and get better interior offensive linemen. I think if you do that stuff, it'll be a successful offseason for Atlanta. Next up, we have the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, there's no work needed at the quarterback or the running back position. Jackson and Henry are good. They're both A+. Now, the wide receiver core is still a C+, but DeAndre Hopkins was just signed, and I think they are retaining Deontay Johnson, and along with Rashad Bateman and Zay Jones, they have a legitimate wide receiver core, but not an actual wide receiver one, because even though Hopkins is great, he is towards the back end of his career. He's out of his prime. So again, the wide receiver position is not going to be of a big significance to Baltimore's offense anyway. As far as the tight end position, it's a B because Mark Andrews is starting to leave his prime, but you don't have to worry about it because Isaiah Likely has been a good improvement backup tight end. Over these last 2 years, he's been very impressive. The interior offensive line, outside of Linderbaum, the two guards, I would probably get a guard in the draft or maybe in free agency. And then with the exterior, as much as I like Ronnie Staley or Stan, I have to look again. I don't believe his other counterpart is great. I think that right now, a little bit of offensive guards and offensive tackles is something you want to look at if you're Baltimore. As far as the defense goes, I mean, they have one of the better defenses. A B- for defensive line. I think there's some moves that could be made, but they have some significant names up there. Linebacker core is a B+, and really Roquan Smith is a big reason for that. And then the secondary, and as for the secondary, amazing. Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphreys to make up the cornerback core. Of course, even the safeties. I really like what they're cooking in the secondary. Their defense is in a really good position, and there's not going to be a lot of work to be done there. Maybe a piece here and there, but most of my concern would be with the offensive line, especially interior. That's where I would focus most of my attention for this offseason to improve. Other than that, the Ravens are in a really good spot. Now we have the Buffalo Bills, and obviously the quarterback position set in stone. Josh Allen just signed a 6-year, $330 million contract, which means that he is the quarterback for the Bills for the future. The running back core with James Cook is their only good back. I don't like any of their other backs. They could probably use some help there. The wide receiver core, though, is probably of big significance since it doesn't look like the Bills are going to be holding on to Amari Cooper. I think they're going to have to do something in the draft, or maybe Keon Coleman's the next. There's just a lot of uncertainty right now at the wide receiver position. I think you got to get him a significant star. If you don't get Allen a significant star, I just don't know. I don't think they have the greatest core right now. As far as tight ends go, Dalton Kincaid or Dawson Knox, it doesn't really matter. One of those two, so you're not going to be paying attention to the tight end core. The worst part, though, is that interior offensive line. I only know Connor McGovern. The other two, they can go. Again, same situation with the Ravens. The guards are not as strong, but the offensive line on the exterior part, the tackles, are pretty good, and I would say that you don't have to put too much significance into looking for pieces there. Shifting over to defense, their defensive line gets bumped up to a B+, close to an A-, because they just got Joey Bosa. What a move. I just saw Joey Bosa was like the most recent thing I saw. By the way, amazing move, and a crazy move by the Chargers. I'll get to that in a minute. Linebacker core, outside of Matt Milano, I'm not impressed with any of the other linebackers. And then the cornerback core, B+, I think they have some significant pieces there. And then I know they just re-signed Damar Hamlin. That's actually something else that was very recent. But the safety core can still use some work. I don't think there's great depth there. Really, with the Bills, work on the offensive line, especially in the middle. Maybe get Josh Allen a significant receiver and, make some changes to the defense. You already started off with Joey Bosa. That's a great start. Keep going. Next up, we have the Carolina Panthers, who need a lot of improvement. Now, they're probably not going to touch their quarterback core because Bryce Young is there. Andy Dalton, he just signed a 2-year contract, so they're probably not doing anything there. The running back core is pretty weak. I'm not moved by Hubbard. They just got rid of Miles Sanders as well. I'm not moved by Hubbard. I'm not moved by Jonathan Brooks. Not yet, at least. Maybe he'll come out and just be really good this year. Who knows? Wide receiver core right now, outside of Adam Thielen and Leggett, who I don't think is very proven, it's not a great core. They need some work. They lost Deontay Johnson. I'd say go find another receiver and get Bryce Young a significant amount of weapons, especially at the tight end position. I mean, I'm not impressed. I don't like their tight end position. Their interior offensive line, though, is actually pretty decent. I wouldn't touch that, though. Get them some better tackles. Blindside protection. I wasn't impressed with what I saw. The defensive line is a C+. I think there is just not enough force there, but with the linebacker core, I mean, you have Jadeveon Clowney, so that's a big move. And then in the secondary, despite the C+ move, I like what they did with JC Horn. They locked him down, made him the highest paid corner in the NFL. And then as far as safety goes, I like it a lot better. There's just so much improvement. This offseason is not going to cut it for Carolina. This is going to take a few off seasons. They just have to be very, very active. Next up, we have the Chicago Bears, and the Chicago Bears are very interesting. Obviously, they're set at quarterback. Caleb Williams is probably going to need a few more years to develop. They're definitely not going anywhere with any other quarterback, especially with the new coach coming in. The running back core is fine. I wouldn't make moves. DeAndre Swift, I think, is a very good back if you use him correctly. The wide receiver core is very, very impressive. I like their front three, from Moore to Allen to Adunze. I don't know if they're all going to stay, but let's say one of them leaves. You still got the other two. I think it's a strong core, so I wouldn't do much wide receiver wise. And then, of course, not with the tight end position. Cole Kmet's pretty good. The interior offensive line did get really good with Joe Thuney. That pickup was huge for Chicago. And really, the offensive line is one of the places that was a weak spot on that offense, and that's what made Caleb Williams not play great. Good moves to start with the offensive line. You still need better tackles. You need better presence on the outside. As far as the defensive line goes, they just recently got Montez Sweat, but I'd still make a lot more moves there. Their linebacker core, though, with TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, it's a great core, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of improvement there. Cornerback and safety, obviously, Kevin Byard at the safety position puts it at an A-. The cornerback core it's good. It's good. I like the grades that I like where they're at. Their defense is just a little bit of improvement. You got to get a blindside protection for Caleb Williams. I don't think you need to give him any weapons. He's really good with weapons. And then the defensive line, create a bigger presence and a bigger threat. It was the Bears defense that made me think they were going to do good prior to that Washington game. Really, maybe with the new coach, the Bears are going to take that significant step forward. Who knows? Next up, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, and obviously no moves need to be made at the quarterback position. Joe Burrow is a great quarterback, and despite the fact that they didn't make the playoffs last year, Joe Burrow still had a very impressive season, so it's really hard to tell where the problem was. It definitely was not him, though you could get him a better running back. I'm not a big fan of the running back core there. Wide receiver core is good for now. Obviously, you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but in the worst case scenario that T. Higgins doesn't stay, despite the fact he has that tag on him, I think that you still need to be looking to improve the wide receiver core. Then at tight end, I'm pretty good with Gesicki being the tight end there. I think that's nice. The interior offensive line, though, is a big problem. And I think that if there's anything you have to improve, especially if you want to create a running game and get Joe Burrow from getting killed out there, I recommend you need to really stock up on some centers and guards this time around. Need to work on that offensive line. It's imperative. Defensive line, I know that Trey Hendrickson is good, but nobody knows if he's going to stay. Then you got the linebacker core, which I'm very impressed with. I like what I see with the linebacker core. I think that there could be some tweaks here and there, but not a big priority. The secondary with the cornerback core is very nice, but safeties, you're definitely probably going to get one in the draft. It's probably going to happen. But overall, with the Bengals, work on your interior offensive line and make some additions to your defense. I think that will be good. Maybe a running back, who knows? Next up, we have the Cleveland Browns. And the Browns quarterback position is one to keep an eye on. Obviously, I think the time for Watson is coming to an end. I think that it's just, he has too many issues going on. Obviously, the injury, it seems like his way with Cleveland is about to end. And then Jameis Winston would take over, but that's not going to be a viable option either. Maybe for 1 year, but I think that they're going to take a look at the draft, and there's a lot of players, especially at their spot. They're the second pick, so they can potentially get Cam Ward or Shador Sanders. So the quarterback position is up in the air. Running back core, you don't need to touch it. No questions asked. As far as the wide receiver core goes, Jerry Jeudy cannot stay as your number one option. I like him. but I think that you got to look to expand there. As far as the interior offensive line, though, I mean, no need for any moves. That's a good offensive line. The tackle position, though, I would make some tweaks. Maybe there you can get a draft pick. As for when you go to the defense, they secured Myles Garrett, so it's a B at the defensive line. Maybe some tweaks here and there, but Myles Garrett, that's a strong. They can keep that. The linebacker core, though, I would like to see them pick up some linebackers in the offseason for sure. The cornerback core, don't touch it. Newsome on one end, Ward on the other. Don't need to touch it there. That's a great cornerback core. Even their third cornerback is pretty good. Though, safety-wise, maybe make a move here and there. Really, Cleveland is get themselves a solid quarterback, another good threat at receiver, give them blindside protection, and then make some tweaks to the safety and linebacker core, and I think you are in a pretty good spot. Next up is my Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott's going to be safe for now, so it's a B, but his job it's in question, but I don't think there's going to be moves this offseason regarding Dak. We do need a lot of help at the running back position. I know we just got Javonte Williams, but I would still love to get Ashton Genty in the draft personally. The wide receiver core, you can make a tweak here and there if you'd like. Maybe just add another additional star. If you don't get Genty, I'd like to get the Arizona wide receiver in the draft. That'd be nice. Tight end position, Jake Ferguson he's good, but you can make improvements there. As far as the interior offensive line, outside of Tyler Smith, move on from some of these other guys. Cooper Beebe, I don't want him to be the center. Get a legitimate center. And then the outside position, the tackle position, it is bad. Tunsil is unproven in my opinion. Terrence Steele commits a lot of penalties. Really, the offensive line, for the first time in a long while, is the weak point of this offense. So a lot of things have to happen on the offense, a lot of changes there. Now shifting over to the defense, defensive line is pretty good. If you can keep Micah Parsons, that's great to go along with DeMarcus Lawrence and Osa. I think that they have a really good defensive line. The linebacker core, Overshown stood out this year. And if you have a really good coordinator, I think they'll use him properly. You can look to get a linebacker if you'd like, but I think that Overshown can step up in that role in a significant way. The cornerback core, when healthy, Trevon Diggs and Deron Bland is a nice duo. And then at the safety core, Malik Hooker is a nice addition to keep. Obviously, there's not much that needs to be done on defense. Hopefully, the defensive coordinator can just wrangle the team together, and they have a lot of star power. They just need great coaching. It's the offense that needs a lot of work. Definitely, you need a solid running back. You got to rework that offensive line and maybe get another weapon for Dak Prescott. That's really where it's all going to come down to. Next up, we have the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos quarterback situation is safe for now. Hopefully he continues to improve. The running back, it's a C+. I'm going to downgrade it to a D because they just lost their running back to us. Wide receiver core, outside of Cortland Sutton, I'm not impressed, not even with Marvin Mims. I want another receiver there. The tight end position is just, I'm not a big fan of Troutman. I think there's going to be work there. The interior offensive line definitely needs some names, but the exterior is fine. Defensive line, I mean, yeah, you're definitely going to have to put some upgrades there. The linebacker core, I'm actually going to upgrade it to a B because of Dre Greenlaw. I think that his presence actually makes their linebacker core a lot stronger. And then the cornerback core, outside of Patrick Surtain, I'm not impressed with the others, especially in the safety position. He's really the only great secondary they have. You got to give him some help. Obviously, he's one of your biggest stars. I think the linebacker core is safe for now. Work on the defensive line, get a lot of pieces on offense, more weapons for Bo Nix. Next up, we have the Detroit Lions. No need to move at quarterback. No need to move at running back. I hope they get to keep David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. That's great for them. Wide receiver core needs no moves. They're great there. Have one of the better tight ends in the entire NFL. Their interior offensive line is strong. So is their exterior. Their offense is good. You almost need nothing there. Defensively, maybe give Hutchinson another partner up front to work with. Linebacker core is also pretty good. Maybe you want to make adjustments there. The cornerback core is strong. Obviously, you've had some pretty impressive moves in the last few drafts there. The safety position can use some work. That's probably where a lot of the focus is going to be, is on the defensive side. But offensively, what do you really have to change? You don't have to change much. You're fine. Next up, we have the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love's going to be their quarterback going forward. I think he has proved that if you give him more, he's going to do a lot better. Josh Jacobs was an amazing addition. Great running back for Green Bay. No need to move anything there. The wide receiver position, despite the fact that they have a solid core, I would still want to add one. I don't know. I probably would add one more. That's just me though. Tight end position, Musgrave is fine. That could something be looked over. Interior offensive line is strong. Exterior can use some work. Defensive line is fine, obviously. The linebacker core can definitely use some work. Just Quay Walker alone, I probably would want someone else to go be with him there. Cornerback core is strong if you can keep Jair Alexander, maybe add something there. And then the safety position is also extremely strong. Really, Green Bay is pretty balanced on all ends. I would just work on giving better blindside protection and more work at the linebacker position. Other than that, I think Green Bay is in a very good spot. Also, potentially another wide receiver. Next up, we have the Houston Texans. CJ Stroud is safe. No need to move anything there. Joe Mixon played incredible, so he's safe too. The wide receiver core is unbelievable. Obviously, there still could be moves to be made, but right now, as it stands, Stephon Diggs, Christian Kirk, who you just got in free agency from the Jags, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, even though Dell had to have surgery, so he may be out. Who knows? But still, get the other three. That's huge. The interior offensive line, though, is very troublesome, and since Tunsil left and went to Washington, their outside is also terrible. So if there's anything to do on offense, clearly you need to look at the offensive line and get some protection for CJ Stroud and Joe Mixon. I also kind of just glossed over the tight end. I think they're fine. Dalton Schultz is a really good tight end for Houston to have. As far as the defense goes, it's B's across the board. They have great possessionary players there, young players. Got Derek Singletary there as well. I think that you can make some moves here, there, and not to mention you also just got CJ Gardner-Johnson there. I think that if there's any place you really want to look on defense, I'd probably suggest doing in the linebacker core. That's about it. Most of this draft, most of this offseason should be focused on building up that offensive line because I think it's atrocious right now. Outside of that, the Texans are in a really good spot. Next up, we have the Indianapolis Colts who have been very active this offseason. The quarterback position is still up in limbo, but now you have competition between Richardson, Daniel Jones, Joe Flacco, which is an interesting one to look at. So probably no quarterbacks in the draft needed. The running back core is fine. Jonathan Taylor is still great. The wide receiver core, maybe make some adjustments there. I would. I don't think they have such a solid core altogether. And then the tight end position is just nowhere. The interior offensive line can also use a lot of work, but don't worry about the tackle position. I think that's fine. Defensive line, extremely strong up front. Linebacker core can definitely use some work though. The same deal with the cornerback core. I think it's amazing. Safety can use some work. So it's just certain positions you want to tweak on defense, but on the offense, you really want to work on getting whoever is going to be the quarterback for the Colts another weapon and better protection down the middle. Next up, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. The quarterback position is a lot more unstable than I thought because Trevor Lawrence is not taking that next step, which is just odd. The running back core is fine. Don't need to touch it. Wide receiver core is pretty good. Brian Thomas was very impressive, and I like Gabe Davis. Maybe if you want to get another one, who knows? Maybe another one. Losing Evan Ingram gives the tight end position for the Jags an F, in my opinion. I think you got to get another tight end in there. The interior and the exterior offensive line both sit at a C. There's going to be some significant work done this offseason on the offensive line. As you shift over to the defensive side, though, defensive line is extremely strong. From Allen to Walker to Armstrong, I think that they are really good there. Linebacker core is also, it has a lot of great pieces. It's the secondary that concerns me, but they have also made some moves there recently, getting Jordan Lewis. That does help, but other than that, their secondary can use some work, and their offensive line maybe even getting a tight end. That's probably where a lot of the focus is going to be. But Lawrence's time in Jacksonville is ticking, and he needs to take that next step soon. Next up, we have the Super Bowl contending Kansas City Chiefs. Mahomes ain't going nowhere. Isaiah Pacheco is still a great running back. Even if you lose Kareem Hunt, you're still fine. The wide receiver core, even though you lost Hopkins, most of the issues are just off the field issues, more or less, but you still have some pretty good weapons there. You're going to get Rice back, I believe. You're going to also have Hollywood Brown back. You're also going to have your young and speedy wide receiver if you could just stay out of trouble. I don't know what it is about wide receivers in Kansas City always getting in trouble. The tight end position's an A-, despite the fact that Travis Kelce's a great tight end historically. I just think that the tight end position You're going to have him for this year. Who knows, you're going to have him afterwards. So you may need to start looking there. But then again, their backup is also pretty good. As far as the offensive line goes, interior is still pretty solid. It's those tackles that bother me, especially number 74. I think you have to get better offensive tackles, and you got to get 74 out of there. He's a high-level penalty committing offensive tackle. I don't think you want to keep Taylor there. Defensively, Chris Jones is locked. The linebacker core is okay. Not much work needs to be done there, neither to the cornerback core, but the secondary in the safety position, you're going to want to have a draft pick used on a pretty good safety in this NFL draft, or maybe even pick somebody up from free agency. Really, it's the offensive line that needs the most work. Of all of this, if you cannot fix your tackle position, I think you're going to run into the same problems you ran into during the Super Bowl. Next up, you have the Los Angeles Chargers. Obviously, no need to work on Herbert. I think he's fine. The running back core just got a big upgrade in getting Najee Harris, so they're good there. I would still like works on the wide receiver position. It's a very young and a very experimental core, so I'm not sure how much I like it right now. I think there still has to be work done there. Just a little bit. I don't know who you pick up. The tight end position, it's not of huge significance, but it'd be nice to work on that as well. The interior is garbage, but the exterior is great because they're very young. I think you need to work on the interior offensive line. That should be a place to look at during the draft and the offseason. But now we have the defensive line, which drops all the way to a D- because they cut Joey Bosa. Why? That was a bad move. I don't know why. I don't like the rest of their defensive line. Their linebacker core is very nice, though. Obviously, you managed to keep Khalil Mack, which is great. The cornerback core and the safeties with Derwin James back there, it's still very impressive, and I like what that defense stands for there. It's the defensive line that needs a whole lot of work in the interior offensive line, while also probably looking for another weapon for Justin Herbert to have. That's probably where Jim Harbaugh should go this offseason. Next up, you have the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams quarterback position is fine for now. Obviously, they're going to want to work on it in the future because Stafford's not going to be there forever. No need to touch the running back core and the wide receiver core. It's an A+, but I'm so confused why they are not wanting to keep Cooper Kupp. That just makes no sense to me. He is easily one of their best players, and they're just ready to cut bait with him, which makes no sense. You can have him, if you manage to keep him along with Puka and now Devontae Adams, that is an unstoppable core. That's a Super Bowl worthy level wide receiver core. I don't know what their idea is, but I don't like it. Tight end core is strong with Tyler Higbee. Now, the offensive line is where a lot should be invested in. Obviously, they've lost some big pieces since their last Super Bowl, so you want to work on both positions significantly. The defensive line doesn't have many impressive players, but the linebacker core, Jared Verse, has proven to be a standout star, especially last year. He was nearly the Rookie of the Year on the defensive side. Cornerback core is fine. I think they have nice pieces. The safety position, though, can definitely use some work. So if I'm the Rams, work on that offensive line, number one. Number two, get that defensive line, get some big pieces there, maybe in the first round of the draft. And then safety-wise, linebacker-wise, let's put some tweaks in there. Next up, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders right now, quarterback is, I guess, set for this year if you're really going to go with Geno Smith, but that's not going to last for long. So get ready to look into the draft in future years. The running back core is weak, which concerns me because this is the team that could take Genty prior to Dallas. The wide receiver core right now needs a lot of pieces, which is a good sign for me as a Cowboys fan. Maybe they go after a wide receiver in the draft and work there. The tight end position, though, is fine. Brock Bowers is great. The interior offensive line is strong, but the exterior can use some work. I think it's just one offensive tackle that they need to grab. Yeah, defensive line, Max Crosby being there, it's an A- right now because you also have Wilkins in the middle. That's strong too. The linebacker core, though, is going to really need something. Got to get somebody back there. Cornerback core and the safety secondary is also very bad. So a lot of what the Raiders need to do right now is, one, I don't know if the offensive line is the biggest significance. It should really be the defense, but also get a weapon for Geno and get somebody in the backfield. If Zamir White is the guy you want, then sure, fine. I don't know. I think you definitely need to get a better weapon. Jacoby Myers being your number one is not a good thing. he's a good receiver, but he's not a number one receiver. Next up, we have the Miami Dolphins. Tua is still a question mark because of his injury history, but I think he's safe. Running back core with Devon Achane is nice. I just wish they kept their other guy. I mean, Devon Achane is nice. I just wish they kept Mostert. I don't know why they parted ways with him, but it was nice. I thought that core was very solid. The wide receiver core takes a step down because Tyreek Hill is probably wanting to leave and get out of there, and I don't know if they want to keep him. So really, as much as I like Waddle, I think you got to get another weapon with him. I don't know if I want him to be a number one. I really like that he's a number two. That's just me though. And then Tyreek Hill, I don't know where he's going to go. Their wide receiver core is kind of a question mark. Their tight end core has never been impressive to me. Interior offensive line definitely needs some work, especially since most of the pressures that they get is down the middle. And you want to protect Tua as much as possible. The exterior is fine for now. I don't think there's going to be much to be done there. Defensive line is fine. Linebacker core is good. The cornerback core with Jalen Ramsey being there is still very solid. The safety core, though, you can use some work. But overall, to me, I think the biggest concern for the Dolphins would probably be their offensive line, getting another weapon to go along with Jalen Waddle, and working on that secondary. Next up, you have the Minnesota Vikings, and while I have it as a B, J.J. McCarthy going forward is going to be very interesting. Minnesota could be looking at a good season, one that can push into the playoffs a little further than they did this year. They just got rid of Sam Darnold. He's with Seattle now. But the running back core is strong with Aaron Jones. Wide receiver core, you don't need to touch it at all. Jefferson and Addison are great. Hawkinson there is great too. You can definitely work on the interior offensive line. I think there's definitely a lot more moves to be made there. The exterior is fine. It's strong, and I wouldn't touch it. Defensive line is also very strong. The linebacker core is very decent. The cornerback core is getting better and better. Their defense was really good last year. Their biggest bright spot for the most part. But the safety position, as much as I like Harrison Smith, I think that you also got to find somebody else to go along with him. I think that is probably their weakest place on defense. And that's saying something. Get J.J. McCarthy better interior protection and get the defense a better safety to go along with Harrison Smith. Really, Minnesota is in a very good spot overall. Next up, you have the New England Patriots. Drake May is going into his second year, so that's fine. I mean, not much to be touched there, though it's still not great. Ramondre Stevenson doesn't make that core a lot stronger. The running back core is weak. The wide receiver core is worse. Really, their best weapon is Hunter Henry, and they just signed him, so that was nice. They have to work heavily on that offensive line. I think that Drake May getting sacked, especially in the second year, if he doesn't have great protection with no weapons, their offense is going absolutely nowhere. On the defensive side, losing Judon a couple years ago doesn't help any matters for them. Defensive line is weak. The linebacker core, though, is a little stronger. The cornerback core is good, and then their safeties are great. Secondary tends to be a very strong place for New England. So really where you need to work, get some weapons for Drake May, maybe improve the running game. They could be in position to get Travis Hunter, which if they do, that's a game changer. You also got to work on that offensive line, which is something that I wouldn't say they're very well known for. And their defensive line, get some bigger pieces. New England has a lot of work to do. Next up, we have the New Orleans Saints. The quarterback position for New Orleans is, I guess it's fine for now, but it'll definitely need some work. Kellen Moore being the head coach should help this offense improve significantly. If you're keeping Alvin Kamara, I think that you're fine at the running back core. The wide receiver core is extremely strong with Olave and Shaheed. I really like both those players. Tight end position is strong too. The offensive line, interior, exterior, though, it's going to need some work protecting Derek Carr. I would make some moves there. Defensive line is strong, of course. The linebacker core is amazing. I like their linebacker core a lot. Cornerbacks, they've lost some pieces over the years, so I would recommend working there, but having Tyrann Mathieu and that safety position is very good for New Orleans. So where would I look? Definitely making some offensive improvements would be mostly aimed towards a better offensive line, and hopefully these other players can stay healthy. And then cornerback core I would like to touch up on. Next up, we have the New York Giants, and here we go. Quarterback is a must-need. Definitely looking to the draft. Running back core, atrocious ever since Saquon Barkley left. I do like Singletary just a little bit, but you need to have some more work there. Wide receiver core, though, I think is going in a good direction. Malik Neighbors is a strong wide receiver. Tight end position is a terrible. Defensive line and the interior needs a lot of work for whoever your quarterback's going to be. Exterior, though, I think is fine. Wouldn't touch upon that. Defensive line, though, outside of Dexter Lawrence, you got to get some more pieces. Their linebacker core is really strong, though, with Thibodeau back there, and I think they just got somebody else. And both parts of their secondary definitely need some work, but getting Javon Holland is a nice upgrade, and I think there's a lot more work to be done. But that offense, gotta get yourself a better quarterback, maybe a tight end, get him another weapon or a better running back to go along with it. Work on that interior offensive line. And then the defense, sprinkle some pieces here and there, but it just really needs to be an offensive overhaul. Got to get some new pieces in there, especially if you're just departing with Saquon like that. Next up, you have the New York Jets, who also just got a new head coach. Justin Fields is now their quarterback, which is going to be interesting. Aaron Rodgers was a disaster. Didn't work out. Don't need to touch the running back core. I like Breece Hall. Don't need to really touch much of the wide receiver core. Even though you lost Adams, you still have Garrett Wilson and Allen Lazard. Maybe if you want to get some pieces here and there, that's fine. You don't really have to work on the tight end position. I don't think it's that big of significance. The interior offensive line definitely needs some help, but the exterior is fine. I think the exterior is in good shape right now. Defensive line is strong as always. Quentin Williams being in there is a very nice sight to have. Linebacker core is extremely strong. Secondary, having Sauce Gardner is also very strong. But if you want to put a new safety in there, that's a lot of safeties this time around. That back core in the secondary, there's probably going to be a huge number of safeties going in this draft and in the offseason. But yeah, really with the Jets, that's the only place on defense I'd like to have a touch-up. As far as the offense goes, better offensive linemen and maybe another weapon for Justin Fields, because it's going to be a really big year for Fields. If he can get this team to the playoffs, that'd be unbelievable. Next up, you have the Super Bowl champions. No need for a new quarterback, a new running back, any wide receivers. All of that are A+. Their tight end is strong, A-. The interior offensive line is the one place on the offensive line that I would like to have some work. That's the one time the Chiefs had any success during the Super Bowl was blitzes down the middle. That did help a lot. Don't need any work on the exterior offensive line. Their defensive line is strong with Jalen Carter in there. There's no need to touch up there. The linebacker core is very strong. The cornerback core with Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean is incredibly big, but they did lose a lot of pieces like Slay. They also lost Gardner Johnson, and they also lost Bradbury. I think that overall, this team does not really need to do a lot in the offseason. Maybe rebuild your secondary unit in the draft like they have it last year, which was incredible for them. You want to touch up the linebacker core? Be my guest. Maybe put in a new offensive line. There's really not a lot of things they have to do. They have one of the strongest teams in the NFL, potential dynasty starting team, really, if you ask me. There's not much pieces that need to happen right now. The Eagles are in really good position. Next up, you have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, the Steelers are having some overhauls. Justin Fields is gone. Russell Wilson's probably going to be gone. I don't know who their next quarterback's going to be, whether they go into the draft or maybe pick up Aaron Rodgers. The running back core, you lost Najee Harris. Now Warren's your number one running back. There's probably going to be a need there. The wide receiver core is extremely strong, though. You just got DK Metcalf to go with George Pickens. There's not much that needs to be done there. Even though Pickens has said he wanted to leave, who knows? That's still up for discussion, but you have DK Metcalf now, which is great. B+ for the tight end position. I think Freiermuth is fine. The interior offensive line, the exterior offensive line, I think are going to need a touch-up. I don't think they're very strong, but really a lot of that offense is all determined by who that quarterback is going to be, which they haven't had a strong quarterback in a while. Defensive line, obviously you have TJ Watt up there, so there's not much that needs to be done. Having Patrick Queen come on your team last year, that linebacker core is an A. No need to talk about that. The cornerback and the safety position, A and A- respectfully. They have so many pieces. They're a better team overall, I would say. I do not see this team needing to improve much on defense. Really, it's the offensive line. It's that quarterback and running back position. If you can improve there, the Steelers could take a next step forward this offseason. Next up, we have the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers quarterback position is safe for now, but it has some leaks and cracks in there. Obviously, you don't need to replace McCaffrey. Wide receiver position, you just lost Deebo Samuel. You still have Brandon Ayuk, and you have some young guys, but I would still take a look, maybe picking someone up in the draft. Who knows? Tight end position, no need to move on from Kittle. The defensive line interior is extremely weak in my opinion, but the exterior position, if you can keep both tackles, would be fine. You don't need to move there either. The defensive line position, it's strong, obviously. Linebacker core has lost some pieces, but you still have Fred Warner. And Warner is a strong piece to have, but that's a place that could use a touch-up. The secondary, though, needs a lot of work. You lost Jadarius Ward and some other pieces. Your secondary is probably going to be a big indication of where to look. And then the interior offensive line. Those are the two spots I would love to see a lot of improvement from the 49ers. Other than that, they're still a very strong team who you should be looking at as a potential Super Bowl contender going into next year. Next up, you have the Seattle Seahawks. You just got Sam Darnold. Yay. So I guess you're safe there. Kenneth Walker is fine. That wide receiver core definitely took a big drop because DK was traded and Tyler Lockett's gone now. Jackson is the only wide receiver of that three that's still there. You're definitely going to want to pick up somebody in the draft or this offseason. You may have, who knows, in between now and this episode coming out. The tight end position I think is fine. You definitely need to work on the offensive line though. It's not strong. Especially if you want Sam Darnold to do well, you have to have a really good offensive line. Defensive line, I mean, yay. Linebacker core, fine, maybe a touch up here and there. The secondary and the cornerback position is a very strong place right now, and so is the safety position. I think that the defense can use touch-ups, but nothing significant. I think really, if Sam Darnold's going to be your quarterback for the future, get a better offensive line and get him another weapon. If you can't do that, Seahawks are going absolutely nowhere. Next up, you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield is safe. Bucky Irving is safe. Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are safe. So you have a really good offense there. Cade Otton's the one player that's probably not safe. That's a place you can have a touch-up. The interior needs some help. It's really bad, but the exterior is fine. And the offensive line. Defensive line, though, it's nice. Maybe a touch-up here and there. You managed to retain some pieces, though, in the linebacker position. You have an A-, and then the secondary, I think, is solid. Maybe a touch-up here and there. Really, it's that interior offensive line and maybe switching guards at the tight end position for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Next up is the Tennessee Titans. All eyes on them. They have the number 1 overall pick right now, but their team is, I am not a big Will Levis fan. I think that his time in Tennessee is going to be wrapping up. I really think they should go after a quarterback with the first overall pick if they can. Running back situation is fine. Nothing solid, though. Wide receiver core, outside of Calvin Ridley, I'm not impressed. The tight end position, I don't know if I would continue to call that an okay position. Maybe I would say look to have a touch up there. The interior offensive line is bad, and unfortunately, the exterior is worse. Their offensive line is terrible with a quarterback who I don't think is well to be proven. Though on defense, outside of the linebacker core being a big problem, their defensive line is strong and their secondary is very powerful. If they can work on their linebacker core, maybe working to get some weapons and fixing that offensive line and changing guard at quarterback, I think Tennessee can hopefully look for at least some kind of turnaround. Something minor, at least. I think it's going to take 2 off seasons to fix a lot of their problems. And then lastly, we have the Washington Commanders, and I'm very happy with what they're doing right now. Love Jaden Daniels. No need to move on from the quarterback position. I like Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler as a backfield duo. The wide receiver core, I said that Washington needed to be aggressive in getting a weapon for Jaden Daniels, and first thing they do is they trade for Deebo Samuel. Great move. They're already doing a great job there. The tight end position, Zach Ertz, it's not going to last long, but it's still pretty good. The interior offensive line, you definitely need to work on that, but you did just get Laramie Tunsil, and now you have a very solid blind side for Jaden Daniels, so they have made some really good moves this offseason to help Jaden Daniels take that next step. Defensively, their defensive line is strong. Their linebacker core, extremely strong. Cornerback core is fairly good. It's the secondary in the safety position that I would like to see a touch up on defense there. Other than that, right now the defense is moving in the right direction. Fix the interior offensive line and you have yourself a Super Bowl contending team just like that. And that'll do it for today's episode. Again, I'm sorry for the hiatus, but I hope to get back on schedule. Obviously, there's some complications that came up these last 2 weeks that kept me from recording. This is a very fun episode to look at. And the next episode is more or less going to be surrounding the wide receiver situation, which I think is very interesting to look at because there's a lot of things that are happening in that position that I would like everybody to pay attention to. Really, it's going to be surrounding by moves that were already made and moves I would like to see be made. And that's going to be that episode. But if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Go follow me on all my social medias. And yeah, that will do it. Have a great day. Take care. And goodbye.